We don't shake hands with people like you.
We don't shake hands with people like you. The words hung in the air of the glass-walled boardroom like poison. Victor Sloan, chairman of Sloan Industries, sat back in his leather chair with a smirk that could cut glass. 12 male executives around that polished table shifted uncomfortably. A few nervous laughs broke the silence. The camera in the corner, streaming live to investors across 3 continents, captured everything. The extended hand, the refusal, the insult, the humiliation. What none of them knew, as they sat in that boardroom on the 47th floor of Langston Tower in Manhattan, was that the woman Victor had just insulted controlled every single dollar that kept Sloan Industries alive. And by morning, $2.4 billion would vanish without a trace. This is the story of Ava Monroe. You're the woman who taught an empire that respect isn't optional. Welcome, besties. Say hi in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. To my returning besties, if you stop in the middle of this story, you'll have dreams wondering how it ended. So, to avoid this curiosity, ensure you be a part of this story till the end. I promise, you won't regret it. If you enjoy strong women stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Ava Monroe didn't come from money. She came from a single-room apartment on the south side of Chicago, where her mother worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on. She came from scholarship applications written at kitchen tables at 2 a.m., and student loans that followed her for 15 years. She built Monroe Capital from absolutely nothing, one client at a time, one smart investment at a time, one carefully earned dollar at a time. By the time she was 38, Ava's investment firm managed over $15 billion in assets. She had clients in London, clients in Tokyo, clients in Sydney who trusted her with their fortunes because Ava Monroe's word was gold. When she said an investment would perform, it performed. When she identified risk, she was always right. And when Ava Monroe backed your company, Wall Street took notice. Victor Sloan needed her backing desperately, even if he'd never admit it. Sloan Industries was a manufacturing empire worth $30 billion on paper, but the paper was all it had left. The company was bleeding money from outdated factories, bloated executive compensation, and terrible strategic decisions. Their stock price was held up by Victor's grandfather's legacy, and very little else. Without a major capital injection, Sloan Industries would be bankrupt within 18 months. That's where Monroe Capital came in. Ava had spent 6 months analyzing every division of Sloan Industries, every contract, every asset. Her team worked around the clock building financial models and restructuring plans. The deal was simple. Monroe Capital would invest $2.4 billion in exchange for operational oversight and a significant equity stake. It was the lifeline Sloan Industries needed, and Victor Sloan hated every second of needing it. He hated that this woman, this self-made investor who hadn't inherited a penny, was now in a position to save his family's empire. He hated that his board had insisted on the deal. He hated that Monroe Capital's terms were non-negotiable because Ava's analysis had exposed just how desperate Sloan Industries really was. And most of all, he hated that he had to sit across a table from her and pretend to be grateful. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Victor made sure to schedule it during Investor Earnings Week, when the live stream would have maximum viewership. He wanted his shareholders to see him in control, demonstrating authority, putting this upstart woman in her place before signing the deal on his terms. When Ava walked into that boardroom at exactly 9 a.m., she looked every inch the powerhouse she was. Tailored burgundy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. natural hair styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, diamond studs that caught the light. She carried a leather portfolio containing contracts worth billions and the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned every victory. The boardroom was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a conference table so polished it reflected like a mirror. 12 men in expensive suits, all white except for one vice president who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. And at the head of the table, Victor Sloan, 62 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that cost $15,000, looking at Ava like she was something distasteful he'd found on his shoe. "Miss Monroe," he said, not standing, "you found us." "Mr. Sloan," Ava replied evenly. "Thank you for the meeting." She walked around the table toward him, and extending her hand for the customary handshake that would begin the proceedings. This was standard business protocol. This was how deals started. This was basic respect between professionals. Victor looked at her extended hand. Then he looked at her face. Then he lifted his palm in a dismissive wave and said the words that would destroy him. "We don't shake hands with people like you." The silence that followed was absolute. Ava's hand remained steady in the air. She didn't drop it immediately. She held his gaze, letting the insult land exactly as Victor intended, letting every man in that room see what their chairman had just done, letting the camera in the corner record every frame of this moment. Then, slowly, Ava lowered her hand. "Understood," she said quietly. She walked to her seat and sat down with perfect posture, placing her portfolio on the table. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no hurt, no emotion whatsoever. But behind her calm expression, calculations were already moving. Victor smiled, satisfied with his power play. "Now then," he said, "let's get through this presentation so we can all get back to real work." What followed was 2 hours of systematic disrespect. Every time Ava spoke, Victor cut her off. "Let me stop you right there," he'd say, then proceed to mansplain concepts Ava had literally written papers about. When her senior analyst presented Monroe Capital's restructuring plan, Victor called it amateur hour, and several executives laughed. When Ava questioned a discrepancy in Sloan Industries' reported earnings, Victor's CFO, a man named Richard Warren, said, "Sir, perhaps you're not familiar with how manufacturing accounting works." "I have an MBA from Wharton and 15 years of experience," Ava replied calmly. "I'm familiar." Victor waved his hand dismissively. "Theory and practice are different things, Miss Monroe. You'll understand when you've been in the industry as long as we have." The men around the table nodded. One of them, an executive vice president named Marcus, actually snickered and said, "Maybe she should take notes." Ava did take notes. She wrote down every insult, every interruption, every dismissal. She noted the timestamps. She memorized which executives laughed and which ones looked uncomfortable. And she waited. At 11:30, Victor leaned back in his chair and delivered what he clearly thought was the killing blow. "Here's what you need to understand. Miss Monroe," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "Sloan Industries has been a cornerstone of American manufacturing for 75 years. My grandfather built this company with his bare hands. My father expanded it into an empire. And I've maintained that legacy despite challenges you couldn't possibly comprehend." He paused, making sure everyone was listening. This industry rewards legacy, pedigree, and the kind of foundation that takes generations to build. It's not about who has the most impressive spreadsheets or the flashiest presentation. It's about breeding. Some people are born to lead empires. Others are born to serve them. And the sooner you accept which category you fall into, the easier this process will be for everyone. The room went silent again. Even the executives who'd been laughing looked uncomfortable now. Victor had crossed a line, and everyone knew it. Ava set down her pen. She looked at Victor with an expression so calm, it was almost peaceful. "Mr. Sloan," she said quietly, "would you excuse me for a moment? I need to make a phone call." Victor waved his hand. "We're in the middle of a presentation." "It will only take a minute," Ava said, already standing. "And I think you'll want me to make this call now, rather than later." Something in her tone made Victor pause. He nodded grudgingly. 5 minutes. Ava walked out of the boardroom with her phone in hand. The executives watched her go, some of them exchanging glances that said they thought she was cracking under pressure. Victor actually smiled. "She's folding," he murmured to Richard. "Good. Oh, we'll get better terms now." Out in the hallway, Ava walked to a quiet corner by the elevators. She dialed one number. Her chief legal officer, Sarah Chen, answered on the first ring. "Execute Clause 8.3, Ava said, her voice low and measured. "Effective immediately." "Ava, are you sure?" Sarah's voice was concerned. "That's the nuclear option." "I'm sure," Ava replied. "The meeting is being live-streamed. We have documented evidence of hostile conduct during negotiations. Send the withdrawal notice to their legal team right now. And Sarah, make sure every financial news outlet has the story within the hour." "Understood," Sarah said. Ava hung up and stood there for a moment, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Then she walked back into the boardroom. Victor barely glanced up as she took her seat. "You feeling better?" he asked with false concern. "Much better," Ava said. "Excellent," Victor continued. "Now, as I was saying before your little break, Monroe Capital's proposed restructuring plan is far too aggressive. We'll need to revise the timeline, reduce the equity stake you're requesting, and—" His phone buzzed. He ignored it. "And we'll need to revisit your fee structure because, frankly, it's—" Richard's phone buzzed, then Marcus's, then all of them, like dominoes falling. Victor frowned. "Gentlemen, please, we're in a meeting." Richard's face had gone pale. He was staring at his screen like it contained news of his own death. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking. "Sir, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Victor snapped. "Monroe Capital has withdrawn their investment. All of it. The room exploded into chaos. Executives spoke over each other, their voices rising in panic. Victor's confident smirk vanished, replaced by confusion and then fury. "What?" he barked. "That's impossible. We haven't even signed yet." "Clause 8.3, Ava said calmly from her seat. Every head turned toward her. "It's in the preliminary agreement your legal team signed 6 weeks ago. It allows Monroe Capital to withdraw all committed funds if any act of discrimination or hostile conduct occurs during final negotiations." Victor's face flushed red. "You can't prove." "This meeting is being live-streamed," Ava interrupted, her voice still calm, still quiet. She gestured to the camera in the corner. "To investors on 3 continents, you refused to shake my hand. You insulted my education, my experience, and my qualifications. You suggested I was born to serve rather than lead, and you did all of it on camera." She opened her portfolio and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is the withdrawal notice. It was filed with the SEC 17 minutes ago. Monroe Capital is no longer participating in this deal." Victor stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "You can't do this. We need that capital. The board approved this deal." "The board approved a deal with a partner who would treat Monroe Capital with respect," Ava said. "You made it very clear that respect isn't something you're capable of providing." Marcus spoke up, his voice desperate. "Miss Monroe, surely we can discuss this. What the chairman said was inappropriate, but we can—" "No," Ava said simply. "We can't." She stood, gathering her portfolio. "For future reference, gentlemen, the capital doesn't care about your legacy. It doesn't care about your pedigree or your grandfather's reputation. Capital goes where it's respected and where it can generate returns. You just taught me that Sloan Industries is neither of those things." Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Our stock price will tank. Investors will panic. This company employs 8,000 people. "Then you should have thought about them," Ava replied, "before you decided that humiliating me was more important than saving their jobs." She turned to walk out, but before she reached the door, she paused and looked back at Victor. "One more thing," she said. "That speech you gave about people being born to lead versus born to serve? My mother was a server. She worked 3 jobs serving people like you so I could get an education. She taught me that service isn't beneath anyone, but she also taught me that I don't have to accept disrespect from anyone. Not even from men who inherited empires they're too incompetent to run." And then Ava Monroe walked out of that boardroom, leaving chaos in her wake. Behind her, phones were ringing off the hook. The CFO was frantically calling the bank. Marcus was trying to reach the PR department, and Victor sat frozen at the head of the table, finally understanding what his arrogance had cost. On the conference room screen, the stock ticker for Sloan Industries began to move. Down, down, down. Within 20 minutes, the withdrawal was headline news. Monroe Capital pulls $2.4 billion from Sloan Industries. Major investment deal collapses after discrimination allegation. Chairman's insult costs company billions. The video clip went viral. The handshake refusal. Victor's smirk. The words "people like you" played on loop across every financial news network. By noon, Sloan Industries stock had dropped 38%. By close of trading, it was down 52%, wiping out $16 billion in market value. Investors fled. Credit rating agencies downgraded Sloan Industries to junk status. Banks called in loans. Suppliers demanded cash payment up front. The empire that had stood for 75 years was collapsing in real time. Victor's phone rang constantly. Board members demanding answers. Shareholders threatening lawsuits. His own legal team telling him he'd just created massive liability. But the worst call came from his father, the previous chairman, now retired in the Hamptons. "You fool," the old man said. "You arrogant fool. Do you know what you've done to our family name?" Victor tried to explain. Tried to defend himself. But there was no defense for what the whole world had watched him do. By evening, the board of directors held an emergency meeting. By midnight, they'd voted to remove Victor as chairman, effective immediately. His severance package was revoked due to conduct violations. His reputation was destroyed. The empire his grandfather built was in shambles. And Ava Monroe? She released one brief statement to the press. Monroe Capital invests in partnerships built on mutual respect and shared values. When those foundations don't exist, neither does the partnership. We wish Sloan Industries the best in their search for capital from sources more aligned with their corporate culture. It was professional. It was measured. And it was devastating. The financial press called it the handshake heard round Wall Street. Business schools added it to their case studies on corporate culture and leadership failure. And in boardrooms across America, executives suddenly became very, very careful about how they treated the people across the table from them. Because sometimes power doesn't announce itself with loud voices or aggressive posturing. Sometimes power is quiet. Sometimes it's patient. Sometimes it just stops shaking hands and walks away. If you're still watching and you believe that dignity matters more than dollars, hit that like button right now. Or drop a comment telling us what moment hit you hardest. And subscribe to Excellent Stories so you never miss another story of powerful women who refuse to be diminished. 3 months later, Sloan Industries filed for bankruptcy protection. The company was broken up and sold in pieces. 8,000 employees lost their jobs. 75 years of legacy ended not with innovation or competition, but with one man's inability to show basic respect. Victor Sloan tried to get another position in corporate America, but no board would touch him. The man who'd been born to lead, who'd talked about pedigree and breeding, spent his remaining years giving speeches about the importance of diversity and inclusion. Speeches no one really wanted to hear. And Ava Monroe? She took Monroe Capital to new heights. Her firm's assets under management grew to $30 billion. She opened offices in 6 countries, and she became known not just for her brilliant analysis and impressive returns, but for something else, too. She became known as the woman who'd rather walk away from billions than accept disrespect. The woman who proved that dignity isn't negotiable. The woman who showed the world that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to play a rigged game. 5 years later, a young reporter asked Ava if she ever regretted walking away from the Sloan Industries deal. Ava smiled. "I didn't walk away from a deal," she said. "I walked away from disrespect. The deal was never real if it required me to accept being treated as less than human. And I've never regretted choosing my dignity over someone else's billions," the reporter pressed. "But 8,000 people lost their jobs when the company collapsed." 8,000 people lost their jobs, Ava corrected, because their chairman valued his ego more than their livelihoods. "That's not on me. That's on him." She was right, of course. The blame belonged exactly where she placed it. Years later, business professors would teach the Sloan Industries case as a lesson in catastrophic leadership failure. They'd show that viral video of the handshake refusal to rooms full of future executives. And they'd ask, "What would you have done differently?" The answer was always the same. Respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost everything. This is Excellent Stories, where powerful women don't just survive, they win, where dignity defeats arrogance, where respect isn't optional, it's required. If Ava's story inspired you, if you believe that no amount of money is worth sacrificing your self-respect, then show it right now. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling us what moment hit you hardest. Subscribe to Excellent Stories and turn on notifications because we bring you stories like this every single week. Stories of women who refuse to be diminished, who choose dignity over dollars, and who prove that real power knows when to walk away. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone facing disrespect at work. Someone wondering if standing up is worth it. Someone who needs to know that choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. Because here's the truth, besties. If you don't like, comment, share, and subscribe to stories like Ava's, it's like saying you're okay with what Victor Sloan did. It's like saying that people like him should be able to disrespect talented women without consequences. It's like saying that money matters more than dignity. And I know that's not who you are. So show us. Show us you stand with women like Ava. Show us you believe that respect isn't negotiable. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, when someone shows you they don't respect you, believe them, and then show them what it costs. This is Excellent Stories, where powerful women win.